Thank you very much, Anthony, and thank you again for organising this event, which I was very pleased to accept the invitation for. Specifically, as I believe, it goes to the very heart of why we actually want to regulate in an efficient and effective manner the financial services, and what for a very long time has been left behind, which is the balance between safety and security on the one hand and efficiency and competitivity on another, where it doesn't make any sense to offer products around the world which can't be backed and the liabilities can't be met, but at the same time, you go figure, if you can't make the money in order to be able to sell those products in the first place, and then actually we're starting to starve the world of the kinds of financial products that they really need to see. So it's a kind of like a vicious circle, and we're coming back to something now which I hope will see some of that balance take account. But obviously since 2008, we've seen something of a cumulative effect of the financial crisis. Has become a bit of now of a regulatory tsunami, as some people call it, and a huge push in a direction of getting that house in order, and rightly so. But is there a way in which we can also retrieve that balance? But as a legislator in the Parliament, I take the issue very seriously, as you'd imagine. It would be silly for me to say otherwise, of course. But in the European Parliament, strong efforts are made all the time to make sure that we at least take account of the global aspect of the regulatory issues, to find some coherence in what we say. It can be lost in the debate in a committee. That's very clear. If you look at what the Parliament does and says and how it interacts, it's a very small affair. It looks like it's just internal stuff. But I mean, we are obliged, as is the Commission and others, to look at the global picture. And obviously, when it comes down to issues like equivalence and convergence, and looking at the G20 and the FSB agenda, we're specifically made to turn our heads from time to time, at least, off the pages of what we consider is just 28 member states of the European Union, big enough, and look at what should be done and how we might cooperate in practice and in the letter of the law with what's going on with the rest of the world. I know with Commissioner Campos in the previous past that we've met and we talked about some of these things as well, as have we also within the Commission, with the Parliament and the Commission, made direct attempts to try to ensure that we speak with one voice on this. But it's not difficult to include the words of a global perspective. What's difficult is making sure that policyholders, depositors and the like are protected without creating an overburdensome regulatory agenda or response for the industry to follow. The balance of safety and competitivity. I've been involved in discussions most recently, perhaps the one area where it most highlights this particular conversation, the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. And in this, it's not a traditional trade deal, as you'll be aware. In this, financial services are still a part of this agenda. They're not off the table, but they are very much a nervous interaction between two parts, two regimes, who look at the recent financial crisis, look at the laws that they've come up with separately, and look at the traditions, the cultures, the constitutional balances and arrangements, and the newcomer of Europe with all its growing powers and all its agencies, and we're trying to balance whether or not we can find convergence, equivalence, what did you call it, substitutive compliance.
That's an SEC term.
That's an SEC term. At the end of the day, I have to say, if we're all flying our kites at the same height, we're getting the same standards met, we're reaching the same goals of protecting policyholders, of protecting depositors, and actually making sure that industries, we're not cutting their noses off to spite their face. I'd be happier talking less about the precise terms and definitions and more about what the achievements could lead to and mean. And I think that goes to the very heart of what I'm saying about TTIP, because although TTIP is a unique, balanced discussion between two regimes who will negotiate critically on areas where they see positive advantage between those regimes to reach an agreement for further trade, and I say this trade can actually lift our economies by up to 1% a year in terms of growth, then that's something to push for. But at the same time, there are parallel discussions going on. There is the financial services regulatory dialogue, which the Commission is involved in, very directly with the Treasury and elsewhere. These things help lift, I believe, those conversations to a new political dimension. And so I'm not going to say that I would be devastated if I didn't hear that the US didn't want to continue in the fine detail of a discussion on financial services, regulatory cooperation in the aspects of the TTIP. What I would be dismayed about was that if it occurred at the same time, that any parallel discussions were not being given the right push in the right directions because of the TTIP. So I'm not wishing for financial services to come off the table, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that at all. There's lots of positive things to be gained. Auditing, financial accounting, insurance, especially in reinsurance. You can go through the list. And there are things which we need to actually reach out on, which are difficult, which we need to resolve as well. And we need to play that up. But what I am saying is that the balance has to be there. This is an opportunity, 36 months to 5 years, an opportunity for us to grab to make sure that the agenda of financial services convergence is put firmly in the front of our minds, if not on the table of these discussions. And I believe that there will be a side discussion on this anyway. Why? Very clearly, the investment part of that TTIP is vitally a financial services deliverable. If companies don't know how to assess the value on one side of the Atlantic to the other of fair value or other such issues in terms of the price of a company, then how are we going to see companies merge, cooperate, purchase, invest without that vital information? So I believe that there are issues which are critically dividing us right now, which will come together in this particular aspect. And that while I'm concentrating on the EU-US agenda, I make this point to you that, in fact, this is something which should have been done years ago, which has been very slow to make progress, which has the chance now to do something about it. And in the face and the very teeth of a very changing global perspective, where the wealth of the economy of the world is leaving the shores of those that were traditionally involved in that commerce and could rely upon it for their own needs and others, and now that regulation may be made elsewhere in the world, it is absolutely vital that we play a positive role in ensuring that we have the answers today for the problems of today and tomorrow, rather than tomorrow being given those solutions by others. Thank you very much.